what is a toxic cycle? So toxic cycle is a pattern or behavior, habits, or interaction that is harmful, damaging, or detrimental to those involved. And this cycle often repeats itself, creating a dysfunctional loop that can be difficult to break. Toxic cycles can manifest in various aspects of life, including relationships, the one with ourselves, relatives, romantic relationship, friendship as well with our family, and of course involves also work environments and personal habits, for example, addiction and codependency of any kind. In relationships, talking about specifically romantic relationships, may involve patterns of manipulation, emotional abuse, or codependency. And for example, one partner may engage in controlling behavior, leading to the other partner to feel trapped or powerless. And this can result in a cycle of conflict where one person constantly apologizes and we experience a temporary reconciliation, but then the cycle repeats itself. So there's no actual change in the pattern. And in many dysfunctional relationships, people tend to engage unconsciously, unfortunately, most of the time in codependency mechanisms, especially emotional codependency. Instead of experiencing love, which it's about feeling free and expanding the self, growing together, learning from each other, we may feel stuck in an intense cycle of neediness and a roller coaster of emotions driven by fear most of the time, of being left alone, and in a constant need of approval and validation. So it's very important to understand when we are with somebody where our feelings come from, if they're coming from a place of fear, a place of needing the other person to be with us because we don't want to be alone or feel lonely, or if they come from a place of love and understanding, appreciation for the other person. And in toxic relationships, the constant experience of high and low emotions can be addictive and also can lead to love confusion in understanding what love actually is and what it means to love somebody. So often people tend to rationalize, deny, or justify unhealthy and dysfunctional behaviors and patterns, not just in the other, but also in ourselves. And when we start recognizing the symptoms of toxic heights, it's essential to start understanding how we can break free from such dynamics. For example, in work environments, toxic cycle may involve patterns of stress, overwork, and burnout that we struggle to say no. And for instance, employees may feel pressure to consistently work long hours to meet unrealistic deadlines, which can lead to exhaustion and decreased productivity. And this can perpetuate also a cycle of stress and dissatisfaction among employees, because being in a work environment that is fair and is balanced, where we feel appreciated, is very important. But what we feel we can't say no or set boundaries in a workplace, that can lead seriously to compassion fatigue, and also to avoiding the fact that we do need spaces to recharge for ourselves, spaces where we need to remove ourselves from our work and just dedicate that time to fill up our tank. And breaking a toxic cycle requires a lot of awareness, taking responsibility from our sides and how we can change. Requires introspections, requires emotional maturity, and a willingness to do things differently to support authentic change, which means just having a little bit of consistency over time in understanding that breaking a cycle can take time and practice. And it may involve, of course, setting boundaries, seeking support, and making difficult decisions to remove oneself from unhealthy situations and relationships as well. Behind repetitive and dysfunctional cycles often lie problems we haven't dealt with, especially involving childhood experiences and the relationship with parents and relatives. It is important to notice how insecurity, if we are experiencing insecurity, a lack of self-worth, self-love, a constant need of the other, a fear of abandonment, judgment, or rejection can be signs that can lead to toxic attachments that we have covered in the previous chapter. And breaking toxic relational patterns requires conscious action and emotional maturity. What does it mean? Very often we move into this world as wounded children because we have these dysfunctional patterns or a trauma that we're carrying with us, and then can lead us sometimes to make decisions based on the hurt we carry. We need to take a step back in understanding why we're making certain decisions, what part of us is deciding to be in a certain way. And that requires a lot of inner knowledge. And for emotional maturity, I mean, stepping out of certain patterns of victimism or feeling that we have no choice or feeling powerless, when really we do have most of the time the power to make different decisions. And sometimes we just need a little help to understand what will be the first step to take towards that change that is very much needed, not just on a personal level. I feel that as humanity, we all on some level struggle sometimes when it comes to relationships. And this is why it's important also to help each other in recognizing when we are behaving in a dysfunctional way, and also in a way that can be hurtful for the self. And of course, this means finding appropriate support, addressing problems with parents when possible, developing better boundaries, saying no when we want to say no, saying yes when we want to say yes, of course. Taking the time to think about things also is very important, because sometimes we feel we have to rush into making decisions when really we just need to take some time to really think about what we need right now, what's the most important thing to do right now without feeling pressured, and learning to take care of ourselves emotionally, of course, physically, mentally, and dealing with the hurt that we may be carrying. These, of course, may be challenging, at times it's not easy, but can be a very transformative journey that leads to authentic and consistent healing and significant progress, motivating us to keep moving forward. So here are some signs that show you may be stuck in a toxic relational cycle. You may be experiencing an emotional roller coaster, ongoing emotional instability, frequent highs and low, overwhelming anxiety without an apparent reason, and feeling disempowered within the relationship, feeling drained or unhappy most of the time, frequent arguments or conflicts without resolution, like feeling that you are stuck in a loop of arguments, but you're not going anywhere with it, feeling not in control of personal feelings or feeling manipulated by the other, tendency to ignore, deny, justify, or rationalize abusive behavior, not feeling valued or respected in the relationship, repeating the same issues in different relationships rather than isolating incidents. So when we're noticing that a specific pattern is repeating itself, we know that is something important and something that needs to be addressed in our life. Of course, feeling unhappy and hurt, but unable to leave the relationship. Perhaps we feel threatened, or there's something else inside that is just hooked into this relationship and we struggle to break it. Our needs and desires are consistently ignored or dismissed. Decreased self-esteem or confidence since being in the relationship. Struggling with keeping personal boundaries and feelings of being taken advantage of. Walking on eggshells, constantly being cautious about your actions or words that you avoid because you don't want to go into conflict with the other person. Frequent blame, like it's always your fault and the other person never takes responsibility for anything. And that may lead also to expressive blockages and resentment when you don't feel free to express how you feel. And of course, abuse, any form of abuse, whatever emotional, verbal, physical, is a clear sign of a toxic relationship.